All right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. Let's get started with some space weather conditions. Let's go ahead and check out right now. Our solar wind speeds are sitting at a 443.2 kilometers per second with a density of 7.6. Checking out the sun, we only have one sunspot right now, and that is AR 2790. AR 2790 is the sunspot that pulled off that long-duration C-class solar flare, but it is now dwindling away as we are now at sunspot number 11, and that's the last grouping that is being labeled right now on the sun for sunspots. Will we see a blank day? I don't know. It's possible. We'll go into that here just quickly here in a minute. Our TCI is steady at 6.08. Cosmic radiation went up just a tad to 9.0% dosage rate. That's still considered high, and it's almost up a full percentage point over the 7-day period. The 24-hour max of the KP is at a 2, and right now we are sitting at a 2. Now, update on that storm forecast. The CME is coming, and it could hit Earth's magnetic field within the next 12 hours. New modeling by NOAA focuses attention on December 10th, that's tomorrow, as the date of greatest geomagnetic activity, specifically between the hours of 2100 UT and 2359 UT, when storm levels could reach a category G3. These, unfortunately, are daylight hours in the USA between 1 p.m. and 3:59, but prime time aurora viewing for you folks out there in Europe, so make sure you try to check it out. It could be a strong event. Activity could continue through part of the night in December 10th into the 11th, giving North Americans north latitude 45 or 50 degrees a chance to see auroras. So, update right now, no storm expected today. Solar wind speeds were up around the 450s, dropped just a little bit to 443 right before our broadcast. And as of right now, pretty minor effects so far, and we'll take a look at the space weather section over at the grandsolarminimum.com real quick. Check out some more space weather stats. There is our solar X-ray flux. It has calmed down since we had that long duration solar flare, C-class by the way. KP-NDCs, you see are bouncing around between a 2 and a 3. And let's take a look at what's coming, because right now, we have a chance to see a blank day or two. And here's why I think that. There's AR 2790 quickly decaying. There's another region that's peering over the eastern limb that is not a problem nor a sunspot right now. This next bright section we'll be watching. This could be our next sunspot, but it usually takes about 5 to 7 days to reach the eastern limb or pierce it. So right now, I'd say, according to this position, we'll probably see this pierce the eastern limb somewhere in 3 days' time. So if AR 2790 sticks around all the way to the western limb, then no, we will not see a blank sun, because I do believe this is going to be our next sunspot region. If AR 2790 loses its qualifications to even be a sunspot anymore, then we could see a day or two of blank zero spots. Now, today is kind of a, this is going to be kind of a an issue I want to address. I don't have a lot of material tonight to go through, but the material I do want to go through is significant enough. And I've seen a lot of action in today from our followers and others about this whole sunspot cycle here, solar cycle 25. And how we could be seeing the strongest ever cycle in history. Now, this is coming from an article, several articles actually that are out there. Usually the ones I could find, the majority of the talk about this is on amateur radio websites. Now, why would an amateur radio website, ham radios, be rooting for stronger and more sunspots? And it's simple. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The more sunspots we have, the better and stronger the signal is, but there is a little bit more white noise in the background. So during solar minimums, ham radio operating is not the best conditions for that. During maximum, though, very good. Now, when you're a ham radio enthusiast, and I'm going to tell you guys, this is not just some little tiny hobby. People that are into the ham radio community, it's a very, they take it seriously. And it's a strong community. And I suggest a lot of you out there to get your license on this. I know Mari has a little bit of experience. Her father had a lot of experience with ham radio. So if you're a ham radio operator, following articles like this is encouraging. And like I said, during solar minimum, not the best conditions. However, I call this kind of writing wishful thinking. And the majority of these articles came from amateur radio websites. A couple of them, like sciencealert.com, actually talked about this as well. What am I talking about? You're probably sitting here thinking, what are you talking about, Jake? I'll read just a little bit here. While predictions from solar cycle 25 have been categorically tepid up to this point, there may be more than just a ray of hope for hams still suffering through the tail end of cycle 24 less than stellar sunspot performance. Yeah. And I wonder, I'd like to reach out to this community and find out how many of these folks actually follow solar cycles. I'd be curious to see that. But this jolt of optimism, and that's what this article is, guys. And I don't mean to sound like that my theory is right and everybody else is right, but these guys are wrong. I don't want to present it like that. At first, I was going to, but thanks to my better half, Mari, we sat and talked about it. She looked over the 16-page PDF, which I will show you, and I've come to this conclusion. Published in late June by Scott W. McIntosh, Sandra C. Chapman, Robert J. Lehman, Ricky Egeland, and Nicholas W. Watkins, the document concludes that sunspot cycle 25 will have a magnitude that rivals the top few since records began. Now, if you just base this whole topic on that sentence right there, boom, AGW, all these anti-sunspot theory people out there are just leeching to that one little part. But here's where I have a problem. This is one of the problems I have with it. It's not even really a problem. This is just an observation. Scientists predict with 95% confidence that cycle 25 amplitude will fall between 153 and 305 spots, and with 68% confidence that the amplitude will be 233 spots. Are you following me here on this window? They're predicting with 95% confidence that between 153 and 305 is the number. Well, good Lord, that's a pretty big field goal post if you ask me. And why am I complaining about this? This doesn't even to me feel like a prediction. This feels like to me that they don't really know. They don't really know. But, and thanks to Mari for kind of opening my eyes to this, the research they're doing, the Terminator is what they call it, is interesting. And I invite you guys to read the PDF, by the way. Forget about these cycles here, or these articles talking about the cycle. But 153 to 305, that's a big window. When you go to NASA, they don't tell you 100 to 115. Actually, it says right here that currently the sun's poles are about as strong as they were at the same point in the last solar cycle, which scientists interpret that signs of solar cycle 25 will play out in similar fashion to cycle 24. Now, this is from NASA. Solar cycle 24 was a feeble cycle, peaking at 114 sunspots. The average is 179. It's important to mention here, folks. Solar cycle 25 is underway and expected to peak with 115 in July of 2025. Now, Lisa Upton also puts a stamp on this. Now, she also wants to make it clear in her statement that there is no implication that we are heading to a Maunder minimum type situation. And she also wants to include at the bottom that even if we were into a grand solar minimum, it's not going to do anything with all the greenhouse gases that we have in our atmosphere. So she's playing a little bit of a shillery here. I don't like her, honestly. I think she is halfway telling the truth. and it's kind of a disgrace to her scientist field. I know there's a few other channels that like her, but honestly, after looking at Dr. Valentina Zarkova's work, it's hard to say that solar 25, cycle 25 is not going to show a decrease along with solar cycle 26. But nonetheless, NASA is saying 115, right? There's no window here. Here's another prediction. Solar physicists predict slightly better solar cycle 25. This was back in October. Solar physicist, and please forgive me if I mispronounce his name, but Leif Salvegard of the W.W. Hansen Experimental Physics Laboratory at Stanford University has predicted a maximum sunspot number of 128. Okay, give or take 10. That's a window. Okay. But again, this guy here, well-respected solar physicist, and he's on the higher side of the prediction, 125. But when you see this report, sunspot 25 could be the strongest ever. That is not what this 16-page PDF covers. And it's also to note, well, I'll wait on this one, but there's interesting backstory to Mr. McIntosh. Now, first, when I saw this, I thought this was just intentionally done to troll Valentina Zarkova, because Ms. Zarkova has met a lot of opponents from her recent work. And it's sad how much she gets bullied in this community, especially by AGW. But again, thanks to my better half, Mari, she took a look at this. And the paper is interesting. There are some applied physics here that do make sense, and it's worth looking at. But to me, 68% confidence that we'll see a sunspot peak of 235, which would indicate this would be stronger than 24. Now, that's one thing. 230. That's a lot. That's way a lot. That's more than 24. But 305. And a lot of people out there are grabbing that number 305 and saying, I told you, no grand solar minimum. Cancel it. It's over. Not due to COVID, due to one paper out of many that are saying the opposite. But I want to make it clear, guys, when you make a prediction of a window of saying 153 to 305, that's a pretty large gap. That's like me waking up and telling you today that our predicted temperature in Ohio is going to be between 20 degrees and 90 degrees. Somewhere in there, it's going to see those temperatures. And that's kind of what this paper is doing too. 95% confidence that it's going to be between 153 and 305. Now, the higher part of that confidence could come from the lower end of this prediction, 155 to 179. What would that mean, though, right? What would that mean to a solar cycle? Again, here's our charts to suggest that the sun is just going to whip out of its minimum and go to one of its highest cycles ever recorded is absurd in a way. We look back here, and I want to show you solar cycles 11. Okay? That's right before solar cycle 12 and 13, which were right around the Gleesberg minimum. And solar cycle 11 looks like it peaks out right around 250, 260, right before the grand solar minimum starts. Or I shouldn't even say a grand solar minimum. This is just the Gleesberg was more of an out of phase type cycle. And what I mean by that, supernova. And Mari and I were going back and forth on that last night and trying to figure out which one was which. But then where's this other thing at? I think it's on here. There's lots of good information to look at to compare Dalton minimum, all kinds of other stuff here. I thought it was on this paper. I guess it's not. That's too bad. Mari showed me something very interesting too that correlated with what this paper was saying in a way. And she showed me a chart that showed these really high sunspot numbers right before the grand solar minimum got really, here it is. Good for her. She showed me this early. Okay. So what does this all mean? Solar cycle 24 was one of the deepest in a long time. In fact, you can look at that, look at all the way back to solar cycle 7 to find these kind of numbers. So the interesting part about this is look at solar cycle 11, 234, and then you had the Gliesberg minimum, which saw 124 sunspots in solar cycle 12, 147 in solar cycle 13, and then 107 in solar cycle 14, which terminator date. Now, they list these dates for this research here, and this is very interesting stuff. But, however, in my opinion, solar cycle 21 marks the possible beginning of the modern grand solar minimum, as we see solar activity continuing to decline through solar cycle 22, solar cycle 23, and then 24, which really got low. And now solar cycle 25 to be predicted around the same. And we've already looked at the information on NOAA about solar cycle 26. It's not even really predicting that much solar activity between 2035 and 2041, almost zero for the smooth sunspot number. Very deep minimum conditions on the way from 2028 and beyond. So there are things that I will give credit to this group of researchers. They are trying to find correlations and points that would definitely help us understand. And look, there is a lot about solar dynamo that we are still learning about. And a lot of that, thankfully, information that I've learned has come from Valentina Sarkova. Now, I've been on the brink here lately of not disregarding Electric Universe, but I feel like I understand the dynamo theory a little bit better than Electric Universe. And I've noticed too that dynamo still uses some of the same terminology that would refer to Electric Universe. So I don't think they're too much far apart, in my opinion. I've got a lot more to learn, obviously. I'm going to leave the link to the PDF in the chat for anybody who is interested in actually looking at the raw data. And here's why. And really this is the only reason why I did this show tonight, was because of so many people out there talking about this paper and these articles written by ham radio websites and a couple of regular science websites talking about the fact that the grand solar minimum is not going to happen and that solar cycle 25 is going to be the strongest ever, and so forth and so on. And I had a problem with this because this is one paper, one group of scientists out of many. And I just showed you a couple of brief examples. In fact, you look at Lisa Upton, who is highly respected amongst the community. I don't agree with her, but she's still highly respected. Leif Salvagard, also highly respected. And his predictions are right around in line with Lisa Upton, between 115 and 128. And also, we've got some in-house people out there who work very hard at this research. David Birch of the UK, he thinks we're going to be somewhere around 91, 97 for the max in 25. So my point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of evidence out there that points towards a weaker solar cycle 25. Now, this research started sometime in 2014, okay? So it's important to note that because this is not brand new. This is not something they just had an aha moment about. This is old research that's being reported now. But on top of that, these predictions of a weaker solar cycle 25 have already been confirmed after the fact that this research was done. Again, I'm not saying that these guys are wrong. I'm just saying that it's hard to grasp on to a theory with a prediction window so big. That's like me telling you tomorrow that there's going to be an earthquake from 2.0 to 8.0 somewhere in the globe. It's pretty vague, right? That doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, I give vague earthquake predictions anyway. I always say we're on a watch for 24 hours or whatever for a 6.4 or higher somewhere in Indonesia. Well, anybody could do that, right? I'm just taking some basic facts and try to put it together and say, look, this looks like seismic activity. Possibly. I'm going to extend that watch. I said 24 to 36 hours. Actually, I'm not going to extend it because in another 12 hours, we will see the arrival of this CME. So stay tuned. We could see some minor seismic activity tomorrow, but I don't expect anything major. And that goes for this whole event, the C flare, solar flare that's coming at us right now. It is spectacular because we haven't seen solar flares like this in about 3 years. But we got to remember, it's still weak. It is not going to be a Carrington event. It is not going to affect the power grid. Now, ham radio users, yes, you're going to experience some issues. GPS satellites, absolutely. Strong aurora, as you know, Europe gets to be the winners on that one. And we might get to see some minor aurora later in the day tomorrow. But however, before anybody gets bent out of shape or even tries to use this as evidence that the grand solar minimum is not happening, you got to back off a little bit. This is just another paper that we can throw into the pile of research. Time will tell. Hey, look, if 2025 rolls around and that sun is firing out solar flares and X flares and all this other stuff, and it's going to be that 305, I'll be the first one to apologize to my viewers. I'm dedicated to this. I'm hoping that YouTube is around in 12 years. That way we can compare what we started with and where we're at. Fingers crossed. Now, I'm sure there'll be another platform if something happens down the road where YouTube is no longer in business. Our website hopefully will still be around. We can still teach that way. But I'm not going anywhere, even if the sunspot numbers do go up. This list right here is almost compelling that after you get that peak, to expect lower solar activity as far as the sunspots are concerned. Looking at this right here. 1966, we hit 285 in solar cycle 19. The next terminator date was for 1978, solar cycle 20, which, by the way, we saw some very, very cold winters in 78, 79. And look at that, right after a 285 smooth sunspot number, we had some pretty cold weather. In the 80s, 230, 90s, 213, and then after that. So it's inconsistent. It's not constant, but there is a slight correlation. Solar cycle 4, 235 smooth sunspots. And then as we head into the next solar cycle, well, look at that, 82, 81, and 5 and 6, before starting to come out of that minimum, and solar cycle 7 at 119. And then look out, solar cycle 8, 245. We start to begin the decline as we go into the Gleason minimum, which is around solar cycle 12, the beginning of that. Right before that, we had a 234 spot count. So there are some interesting correlations that do line up that could play a factor into this research. But my biggest advice to all of you out there, especially the ones who do follow this, grand solar minimum, solar cycles, anything to do with space is very high and complex, okay? We're not in the business of overnight sensation gratification. This is a very long process that we will see cooling in the sense of, how should I say this? It's going to happen on a decadal basis, in other words. I don't care how cold it gets this year. Next year could warm up a little bit. 2 years of colder weather for a while, 2 years of warm. It's that overall average. And really, you can't get a good look at cooling and warming unless you're looking at a large range of data. At this point, right now, I am on the fence. I'll continue to do the research. I'll continue to look at this work here, but I'm not convinced that we're going to see the strongest solar cycle, because if you look at these terminator dates, some of them are consistent where they're really high and then you've got really low solar activity for a while and then it goes back up to really high and then you've got really low solar activity. For example, solar cycle 19, 285 was the peak. 157 is not that low. It's just a little bit below average. And then 21 and 22 and 23 cycles, those were above average or at average. So we didn't start really seeing those weak numbers from our star come through until solar cycle 24. And there's plenty of reason to believe that that number will continue to decrease. Like I said, I'm going to reach out to Valentina Zarkova after the first of the year. Things are a little crazy for her right now, but she is going to be available to talk about stuff like this, I think, a little bit more on we'll be able to dive into this with a little bit more in depth. Taking a look at some of you in the chat. Hello to you folks out there. Edward, good to see you, sir. Of course, knife collector Richard Davis, good to see you, sir, from New Mexico. Very enthusiastic gardener, hello. Dorothy Rose, hello. Aquarian Riddle. Mentioning another channel in here. Yeah, I will say this without mentioning his name. That's the same channel that tried to tell us 5 years ago that the sun was made of water. Okay, I just want to remind everybody, there's all kinds of wild and crazy theories on YouTube. And I know my channel's on YouTube, but I hope one day that I get to elevate from this platform. This is not going to be the end all for me and this channel. We have a website that's absolutely gorgeous. Hopefully within the next 4 to 6 weeks, Mari and I will begin a more full-time role with the website and the YouTube channel, but more for the website, folks. More for the website. Why are we going to be focusing more on the website? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you can't censor my website if you're YouTube or Facebook or anything like that. Nobody can censor my website. So I can put whatever I want. I can put the GSM glossary knowing that the truth will be told. I don't have to worry about my advertisers coming down on me and telling me I got to take this down, or I get some kind of copyright strike for misleading or spam. That's not going to happen on the website. But guys, look, go to our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. This is a great starting point for people who are brand new to this topic. Brand new. This is layman's, guys. This really is. Think about it. You've got a space weather section. You've got a global weather section. Our GSM resources. All right. We got drought monitor, commodity future, commodity prices. Look at these crop reports we have here. Climate blogs, Climate Depot, Mark Morano, getting a lot of attention here lately. David Dilley, we interviewed him a while back. Dr. Roy Spencer, who runs the UAH, No Trick Zone, Global Cooling. That is one of the best links that we have. Why? That webpage is riddled with peer-reviewed cooling papers. Per Strandberg, Cooling News, also a friend of ours. Real Climate Science Today with Tony Heller. When he's doing climate stuff, yes. I love that station, that channel. Volcanoes and Earthquakes. You can look at volcanoes live. You can look at USGS, Smithsonian Institute. Guys, we've tried to lay it out the best that we can. Friends of GSM, Meet the Starman, Watchers, Abrupt Earth Changes. We'll add to this website and more, okay? And then if you like what we do here at this channel, you can go to our Teespring shop and get yourself a sticker or a shirt, or even better, oh yeah, it's better, get Prepping Shop. Oh no, that page is gone, so we got to fix that link. Mari had a link for prepping supplies and whatnot, because on top of
what link's not working?
The resource page for Get Prepping, in the home section where it says help support with what we
fix it.
Yes. So Mari put together some great ideas for prepping, because this channel also is going to start focusing more on prepping when we start doing this full time. We don't talk about the prep as much. We talk about what the weather's doing. We talk about what the sun's doing. We talk about seismic and earthquakes and crop loss, but we don't really emphasize enough about prepping, and we really need to. So again, I just wanted to come on the air tonight and kind of clarify some things. Yes, do we take note to this research? Absolutely. I was going to disregard it at first. But like I said, my better half, and there's a reason why she's called the better half, talked some sense into me, opened my eyes a little bit, read the paper, talked to me about what was going on. And it's not all a bunch of hogwash, but it's important to note that when you mark a prediction of 153, so basically you're saying about half, 150, there's a 150 sunspot window here. That's still a guess. That doesn't mean you for sure know. And even a 68% guess that it's going to be around 180 or higher, that's still low. So the higher the number, when they try to single in on a certain number, the percentage of confidence is lower. When they show you a wide range of numbers from 153 to 305, well, then the confidence is through the roof. Well, of course it is. Now, again, I am not trying to minimize Scott McIntosh's work. I'm just simply stating that there's a lot of folks out there that got really excited about this, as if to say, well, you were wrong. Grand solar minimum has been called off. I'll just hold the phone. Guys, what it comes down to, and again, I left the PDF in the chat. Prove me wrong that you're not lazy. Because the people that are writing these articles saying that this is going to be the strongest forecasted cycle ever are lazy. They're lazy, and they include the PDF that goes along with the story, but they don't read the PDF because they would change the wording of their article if they did. They wouldn't be so joyous in the report that we're going to see so many sunspots between now and 2025. That's just not the case. Right now, since we've been doing this channel in 2016, everything that we were told with sunspot numbers has been accurate and still is. So again, I'm not expecting this paper to actually hold its weight and value. It does bring up some new interesting research to the pile here. But let's all slow down, take a deep breath, and read this PDF, please, because these articles that I've seen today all over the internet and some of the people that's contacted me, oh my God. I mean, I got people who are actually saying they don't believe in the grand solar minimum anymore because of this article. Hey, that's your choice. I'm not going to force you to understand or agree with me, okay? But I feel like we put enough evidence out there that shows that we have a pretty decent, solid idea on the foundation of what's getting ready to happen to us here in the near future. Mari, did you want to say anything before we left the air? I really didn't have a lot. Actually, hold on before you do that. I was going to do a quick update on the weather. Not much has changed on some of these systems that are coming across the U.S. A little bit here closer to the middle of the month. We see some more snow in the Northeast, Northern Plains, Northwest. By the way, the best white Christmas chances are going to be in the upper elevations and mostly in the Northwest. A slight dusting to coating is possible for the Northeast right before Christmas, right here, December 19th. And then again, possibly on Christmas Day, we could see some slight snow showers across New York and the Northeast. But as far as the snow goes, don't really pay attention to the blue and the light blue because, guys, a couple days in the 40s and those snow amounts will melt. You can definitely see here in Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. That's where the majority of the snow is going to be. And then you go over here to the Northeast and the North Country in New York. Definitely a good chance for some white Christmas action. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Merry Christmas. You guys will also see a good chance for white Christmas. If you live in Western New York, South Towns of Buffalo, Williamsville, and Erie, Pennsylvania, and Cleveland. Yes. Upper parts of Michigan, white Christmas. Eastern parts of Wisconsin, white Christmas. Other than that, better luck next year. All right, Mari, did you have anything you'd like to say before we left the air?
Hi, Jake.
Hello.
Thanks for the opportunity. Great show tonight.
Well, it was just a little brief. I had to get it off my chest because there was a lot of noise about this article.
Well, on social media, things were a little tense, and people are, jumping to conclusions. And even you were a little wound up
at first,
morning.
Yes.
And I'm like, let me research this. And it's just as simple as that. It's this paper. I think Valentina had Scott as a student in some class.
And I didn't want to say that because I wasn't sure yet, but
anyway.
But
they know each
so
other. They're a part of the same communities, and I'm pretty sure I've discussed him with her in the past due to other opinions about solar activity. And in the end, if you read this PDF, it is what it is. It's a scientific research paper that presents a very interesting theory about terminators and the spacing of the terminator events in correlation to other solar activity. And there's just simply not enough data in there. It's the paper, if you read it for what it's worth, it's more speculation, and it's putting thoughts on paper to this theory, which will only be proven through time with observing what we currently are going through. So I look at it that. I don't look at it as like debunking GSM or anything like that. It's just that's what they want to forecast that. And it's just a shame that there's so many people excited. I know I get the ham radio community with the propagation. Totally get why people want to be positive about that and get sunspots. I want more solar activity just for our own well-being on the planet.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, I'm all about wishful thinking. But in the end, the reality is that the paper really doesn't have a lot to it. And the broad range that it's predicting is sort of like, it made my eyes roll in the back of my head. So I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to just chuck it aside because I find that the Terminator events are an interesting theory and it's an interesting concept, and I'm alert and paying attention and watching it unfold, just like other people are. So it's just, that's it. That's my bit, Jake.
And just like we've always said about the information we share with you, only time will tell. But I'm sick of saying it too, because I feel like every time we prove something right about what we're seeing on this channel, something else comes out, and we got to wait several more years to prove that one too. Well, and that's just how this is going to work out, folks. That's just how the research is.
You know me, the chronic fence sitter. Someone actually made a little snarky comment in the chat about being a fence sitter because I don't ever want to be wrong or something. And it has nothing to do with that. It's like, I don't want to be bogged down with one side or the other of the fence with their views and dogma, their points of views. I don't want to be weighed down by one perspective versus another. I want to sort of sit above it, be objective, look at it rationally, look at all the facts, and not be blinded by the dogma of other people's opinions and everything. You have to, and it's so hard with science these days because everyone has a very strong belief system, and it's ever since I've gone into atmospheric sciences and stuff, I say people should not latch on to an answer. If you're expecting just to come onto this channel and get a yes or no answer, or have confirmation that something's black or white, you're going to be disappointed, because that's not how this process works. There's too many unknowns. It's a very chaotic system with many different cyclical events that overlap. So it's not an easy topic to follow, and you have to really proceed with caution and don't jump the gun when you see one or two things that say one thing. You have to sort of take it in and then just piece things information-wise together without choosing an answer. Because as soon as you choose an answer and latch onto it, then your views are distorted from anything else and any possibilities. If I'm getting too cosmic or deep, I'm sorry. That's just how I am.
All right.
I am who I am, Jake, and I'm leaving now.
All right. Well, thank you, Mari. And again, thanks for tuning in tonight, guys, to this special edition of the Grand Solar Minimum Update. We could be live tomorrow. I'm not making any promises. We could go 4 nights in a row. You never know. You just never know. All right, guys. I hope everyone has a safe and great evening. And until later on, we will talk soon. Take care, guys.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.